black Americans have been the only real diehard Americans here, because we're the only ones who carried the process through the process. That everyone else has sort of like skipped stages. We're the ones who marched, we're the ones who carried the Bible, we're the ones who carried the flag, we're the ones who tried to go through the courts. And being born American didn't seem to matter. Because we were born Americans, but we still had to fight for what we were looking for. And we still had to go through those channels and those processes.
I don't really care what you have to say. Facts over fiction is the motto replay. Muhammad Ali came up from the clay. Grassroots built up this USA. Now knowing your history, you'll get played. Equip yourself cause you came to slay any opponent that's up in our way. Look at Malcolm X and his delivery.
All right, family, welcome. Happy Veterans Day to everybody. Just want to make sure we got audio here. All right, family, welcome. All right, we do have audio, so we are good.
We're good to go.
We are good to go. Have my good brother Divine in the building from the U.S. Freedmen's Project in New York. How you doing today, brother?
I'm doing well. Happy Veterans Day to all those that serve, but especially a special Veterans Day to all of our American freedmen that have served this country and fought in every single war to push this thing forward for a true justice for all.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So we want to actually get some updates about the commission out there that's going on with reparations. But before we do that, we're going to have a little housekeeping, and then we will get into the topic and discussion. And we also want to get your take, brother, on the post-elections, not only from the U.S. presidential campaign, but also what's going out there in New York too, bro.
Absolutely, man. There's a lot to digest, a lot to break down, and I was just speaking about this on a space on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, that how our narrative is missing from the overall discourse, and we definitely need to have more panels, more discussions about this election, its turnout, the exit polls from an American freedman perspective, because we're hearing the right-wing perspective, we're hearing the left-wing perspective, we're hearing the Democrat shill perspective and the liberal media perspective, but our perspective and what it means for us and the reasons why we did the things we did during this election need to be told so we can use that moving forward for our advocacy.
Absolutely. All right, brother, so we're going to get the music queued up, as we usually do on here.
The theme song.
Theme song, yes, sir. All right. Got it bumping a little bit. I don't want it too loud to make sure everybody can hear us here. All right. So, if you have not yet had a chance, you can go to Amazon.com. Support us there. It should be in the description below. It's free. You can just click on that link and you can support our channel here on Emin the Mass Media Group. You can also go to our store. That's etnmediagroupstore.com. That's etnmediagroupstore.com to support us there as well. We do actually have a Coalition for a Just and Equitable CJEC merch there as well, so you can check on that. Speaking of CJEC, go to cjec-official.org. That's cjec-official.org out here in California. The only, as far as I'm aware, lineage-based reparations organization fighting on behalf of those who were enslaved and those descendants who were enslaved here in the United States of America. All right, let's see here. Do I have anything else? Oh, I can't forget about reparationsnowdoc.com. That's reparationsnowdoc.com. You can go see the documentary there if you have not yet seen it, or you can check it out on Tubi. It is free. All right. And if you haven't seen the previous show that we did with our good brother Divine and Reverend Dr. Coachman as well,
Yes.
You can go and check that out. We did that, was about a month ago, was it?
Just about.
A month ago? Okay. All right, and I guess let's get busy, man. Let's get started. So later on, we're going to be talking about, in particular, the Democratic party and their campaign and see what happened. And then later on, probably not until maybe when it gets closer. I don't know. We might do it in December. We're going to actually be talking about what lies ahead with the Trump administration. But today, after this program, so everybody stay tuned, we're actually going to be going once again, focusing more on the Democratic Party and see what happened, see how the ball got dropped, and I'm going to get everybody's take on it. And before we go, man, I know, some people obviously don't know this brother, but we did happen to do an interview with him. He did pass away. His name's Dr. T'Chaka Muhammad out here in Sacramento, California. He's a good elder in the community. If you have a chance, family, go check out on our YouTube channel. We did a good interview with him, and we were fortunate to actually speak with him. So, may he rest in power, and definitely peace and condolences to his family and friends. And also good brother Tony Todd, who passed away, man. For those who
Yes.
don't know, he played, he played in a whole bunch of film and TV roles, but one role that he did play that I think a lot of people know him by is Candyman. So definitely want to give him, condolences, and I'll share to that brother, man. And for those who don't know, we're not promoting this in terms of no sponsorship at all. But, I want to give a shout out to our good brother Ice Cube. Hopefully we can actually get him on the program. He has a pretty good song, man, called It's My Ego, out right now on YouTube. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Ice Cube, man, because he was actually one of the supporters of reparations, in particular AB 3121 out here in California.
That's right.
When it started, man. So, got to give props, brother, where props is due, man. So I guess, brother, let's get started. First of all, man, if you want to give a brief introduction to yourself, and then I want to play a video after you give your brief introduction.
Okay, well, for those that know me, you know who I am. For those that don't, my name is Divine Prince. I'm the current president of the U.S. Freedmen Project, the only organization in New York that we know of that is advocating exclusively for those of us whose families were formerly enslaved and emancipated in the United States of America. We are fighting for remedial justice, reparations, and all of the above, but also a state-level Freedmen's Bureau, as well as a Freedmen's Bank. And so that is who we are. That is who I am. That is what we do. And we are definitely looking forward to pushing this fight to where it needs to go for the rest of 2024, 2025, and beyond.
All right, brother. So let's go. I think we played this clip previously in our other interview that we did with you, but let's play it again, man, because it's always good to get more information, right? For those
Absolutely.
That missed. So, brother, let's play this clip, man.
My name is Divine Prince. I wanted a big reveal, but I guess I got it now. I'd like to start with a definition as defined by the federal government. African American. Any person having origins in any of the black racial groups of Africa. One more time. African American. Any person having origins in any of the black racial groups of Africa. This means black Americans are African American. Afro-Caribbeans are African American. And continental Africans are African American. Hypothetical question. If you're able to be you and you're able to be me, who am I? My name is Divine Prince. I'm a descendant of multi-generational New Yorkers by way of Georgia and the Carolinas, and I am the current president of the U.S. Freedmen Project. Sadly, we are the only organization in New York advocating exclusively for black Americans, those families that earned the status of freedmen by winning the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln's words, and through more of Abraham Lincoln's words, the Emancipation Proclamation of 1863, and finally solidified by the 13th Amendment to the Constitution in 1865. We are also the only organization to lead a workshop on reparations at the Black, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, and Asian Caucus Weekend to educate the public and legislators on how to get reparations right. Now, I had a bunch of moral arguments on why we need to get it right, because another reparationist by the name of Dr. King believed that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. But if I've learned nothing else from the Democrats in New York and every single decision maker involved with this bill, and we've met with them all, it's that they will not do what is moral or what is right for Black Americans unless we make it politically impossible for them to ignore us. I always say this government will never do anything for the freedmen that we don't force them to do. Being naive, I always thought that applied to only the Republicans. But in this blue state, the opposition to getting reparations right has come from the Democrats and from our legacy organizations. With that said, I am imploring this commission to do what is legally and constitutionally sound if we can't do it morally. Race-based policy is unconstitutional whether we like it or not. Policy based on status is constitutional, and it's how policy has always been constructed, i.e. veteran, immigrant, Native American. The status of freedmen has legislative and constitutional precedent in crafting remedies for those families reparations has always been for, as determined by the American Freedmen Inquiry Commission, whose findings resulted in the Freedmen Acts of 1865 that created the Freedmen's Bureau and the Freedmen's Bank. With conservative activists, Ed Bloom and others challenging race-based affirmative action, the Fearless Fund, and the Evanston Reparations Initiative, the status of freedmen has to be used for two reasons.
Time.
How much more do you have?
I got like 10 seconds.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much, brother. The status of freemen has to be used for two reasons. One, to bypass this constitutional challenge, and two, because this current Supreme Court has deemed remedial justice based on what was done specifically and exclusively to freedmen from enslavement to present day as still good law. And I'll end with this. Racial justice, though a worthy cause, is not the same as and should never be conflated with reparations for American freedmen families.
Boom. Boom. There it is, family. There it is. So, brother, can you give us kind of when that wonderful public testimony happened, where it was, and why you decided to go that route in terms of your presentation?
Oh man, that's a great question. Oh man, you put me on the spot with trying to figure out when it exactly was. I believe that was the second meeting that they ever had as a task force, if I'm not mistaken. And I know it was in Albany. I can't tell you the exact day, but what happened was, and just as I was sitting there and they let us know how much time we were gonna have, because a lot of times, not to get my Jay-Z on, but a lot of times I don't really write. I don't prepare comments, right? I don't really write it down. I go where my mind and my heart takes me, and I just flow, because I think that's how I operate. That's my most authentic self. But once they told me that we were only gonna have 3 minutes, I was like, oh goodness, I gotta craft something that's gonna fit within this time limit, but also be impactful. And so, as we sat through the meeting, is where I crafted that comment. So as they're talking and as they're voting and doing different things, and I'm talking to the members of the organization and people that we came with, I'm just hitting the points that I know that we need to hit. But one thing happened, and it's so interesting how, just not being a Nostradamus or anything like that, but this is way before what happened in California happened. But I already knew at that point that it needed to be pointed out that the Democrats, though they present themselves as our friends, as our allies, that they're going to do what's right for us, it needed to be pointed out that they were the major opposition in this blue state. And then California happened, right? And so you get a chance to kind of see how poignant my testimony was, because the California Democrats are the ones that obstructed justice and crashed that whole thing out. And so I was just setting the stage to let people know that in our dealings with the New York State legislators, and this is a blue stronghold for now, and we'll get into that later with the election results, but the bottom line is that they are the ones that are obstructing us, not from having a task force, because they're willing to do that, but getting a task force that gets it right and focuses exclusively and specifically on those American freedmen families that are owed the justice and are owed that debt.
All right, and just so the family and the viewers know what we're talking about, we're actually talking about August 31st, 2024, at the Capitol here in Sacramento, California. The CLBC basically blocked two bills that were going to be specifically for lineage-based reparations, and one of them, I know most people listen to us already know this, but for those who don't, one was the California Freedmen Affairs Agency, and also the fund to support and build that foundation for reparations eventually here in California. So uh, yeah, brother, that was very powerful, man. Definitely very powerful. I guess let's get into it, man. You
Okay.
know what I'm saying? Let's start it.
Yeah.
First of all, what's going on in New York, brother? It looks like there's one of these controversial programs. I want to read this real quick out there in New York, or quote unquote controversial. And I'd like to get your take on this. So, according to this article, it says New York City to end controversial program supplying migrants with prepaid debit cards after dropping 53 million. Mayor Eric Adams is ending his administration's controversial program supplying migrants and taxpayer-funded shelters with prepaid debit cards to pay for groceries. The pilot program, launched in March under an emergency contract with New Jersey-based tech startup Mobility Capital Finance, in total doled out 2.4 million in preloaded Mastercards to some 2,600 migrant families for food, City Hall officials said. Adams on Thursday announced he wouldn't be renewing the initiative after it expires in January, with officials noting with dwindling numbers of asylum seekers and shelters and saying the city wants to move away from much criticized no bid emergency contracting. What's your thoughts, brother?
So a couple things, right? And I just want to link this from the beginning. Now, again, I'm not advocating for what they said or what they did, but I want to use this as an example for why, again, foreshadowing what we're going to talk about with the election results and what you're going to talk about, on the show that's after this one. When Trump and JD Vance came out and they were talking about people were, eating the pets, right? Because someone on the ground told them that's what was going on. And then the media came out and excoriated them and made that this huge story, right? What we have to understand is that for months and months and months, the Democrats in New York told us that none of this was going on, right? And so now we're starting to see that all truth and all those things that were being done in the dark legislatively are coming out in the light. They're coming to pass, right? And so this program was something that they were gaslighting the people on and saying, no, they're not getting specific set-asides. They're not getting things that you're not getting. And so now we're starting to see that these programs are being exposed, and now they're being stopped. And it's, again, this is all conjecture that I'm about to say from this point forward. I believe that the charges that were eventually levied against Adams is because he pushed back on these types of programs and eventually let the public know that, hey, the monies are going to run out. Our budget can't sustain it. And then he weaponized the budget to try to get this thing right and try to right the ship and say, hey, if you want this federal government, y'all need to send more funds. And they were unwilling to send the funds. And then right after that happened is when you started seeing all those charges being levied against Adams and the people in his administration. Now, I believe that all those things obviously were happening, but they were turning a blind eye while he was down with their agenda. The minute he turned his back on the agenda and made it publicly known what was happening, that's when I think they came and tried to get at him. And so that's my conjecture, but the facts on the ground is that they told us that none of these programs were in place, that they weren't getting special set-asides, that was not available to everybody in the city, and we found out that they were lying. Just like we found out across the country that they were lying about different things as when it came to this illegal alien, legal migrant crisis.
Yeah, I know out here in California, man, I mean, we do have a lot of undocumented, and we're actually going to get into that in our next show. Do have a lot of undocumented individuals here in California, as well as I heard Chicago's getting hit up, and Texas, and so
Yes.
forth. So I just definitely wanted to get your take on that in terms of, the migrant or the undocumented people coming into New York. How is that situation right now? Do you feel, uh, because Trump has been, um, won his election, do you feel, uh, what's the temperature out there? Do you think people are getting a little scared in terms of being deported? I mean, are the reports like basically true that at one point New York was getting flooded with a lot of undocumented people coming into the New York State?
Without question. And this is what our at least the Black American grassroots, this is what we were talking about using your bully pulpit. See, now we don't know what's going to happen. We understand we've been hearing talks about the price tag, what it's going to take, who's going to round these illegal aliens up, right? We've heard all this talk. But the bottom line is that Trump is coming in already, before even being sworn in, using his bully pulpit, using his platform to say, here's what we're going to do. And so that is what we were talking about when we're talking about addressing this current administration. When they said, hey, black folks, you helped elect us, we're going to have your back. Whether what you wanted to propose for us specifically, even though we know they didn't want to do anything for us specifically at this point, but what we were saying is even if you can't get it passed, use your pulpit, use your platform to advance the messaging of the Black American grassroots. Let this country know that you're dedicated to getting remedial justice and reparations for us, for our people, for our families at the federal level. Even if you can't get the legislation passed, you put that messaging out there. Because what Trump is doing, whether he can get these mass deportations passed or not, he's setting the stage. He's setting the standard. And I'm telling you, it is trickling down here in New York. And that's why Eric Adams ended that program. He understands now that he has a ally that's going to be in the White House. They have taken this subject and made it less taboo, right? And so what that does is that allows the people on the ground that want to do the right thing, that want to act, that want to uphold the law when it comes to immigration, to uphold it, because this current administration was not an ally to that. They wanted these illegal aliens to have carte blanche and to get all types of resources that were excluded from actual citizens in New York. And so what's happening right now on the ground is that you've had multiple shelters, aka hotels in New York City, that have now let them know, hey, you had up until this day. I know one in Albany had, they were saying that they were going to start getting the migrants out of the hotel shelter like in late December. Now it's been pushed up to like the first and second week of December. So they're starting to purge these people out, and now they're going to have to come back down to New York City. And when they get down to New York City, the first thing on their mind is, do I really want to register with these agencies that this Trump administration is going to have access to? And so now that has definitely changed the atmosphere on the ground. And in fact, another thing kind of that's less measurable is while this election cycle was going on and the campaign was going on, you have multiple Afro and white immigrants coming into our spaces, coming into our conversations, with a level of arrogance, right? With a level of entitlement, saying what we could do, what we can't do, what we should do, what we shouldn't do. But now that Trump has won this election, the discourse has completely changed, where the conversations are less hostile, they're less arrogant, they're more how can we ally. And so that is just one of the things that starts to happen when you have somebody that's coming in and saying, listen, hey, all the things that you used to do, you're not going to be able to do anymore. And everything changes when that happens.
All right, man. Well, speaking of that, do you think, I don't know, have you been hearing a lot of, since Trump's, been elected, a lot of maybe fear mongering about Trump, or more so people are afraid of what's going to happen when he gets into office? Just in general, is that, have you been hearing that at all?
Listen, one of the things that is missed in this entire election cycle, again, because it's not coming from the grassroots, not coming from our perspective, is that they talked about joy, they talked about vibes. We know she had the celebrity endorsements. We know that she raised $1 billion from the oligarchy, and people are pretending like it was everyday citizens that helped her raise $1 billion. The fundamental premise, the foundation of Kamala's campaign was fear. Was, hey, I know we don't got anything specific for y'all, especially when we're talking about the American freedmen. When we're talking about what was going to be done for us specifically, all they gave us was, look, I know we don't have nothing on the table for y'all. I know we only got universal programs, but you don't want Trump. Trump is going to do this. Trump is going to do that. Trump is going to do this. Trump is going to do that. And so instead of telling us what they were going to do and how they were going to specifically fight and advocate for our families, they fed us the fear-mongering of Trump. Like, Trump is bad. He got all these convictions. He's an election denier. And, you know, he's going to roll back and take all these rights away. And now that the election is over, now you see all the Democrats and their shills become election deniers. Where they're like, let's do a recount. And what happened to the 20 million people that came out for Biden that didn't come out for Kamala? And God forbid you analyze that and say, hey, guess what? She has always been an unpopular candidate back in 2020 when she failed the first time on her presidential bid. But they can't see that because, and, you know, one of the terms I like to use with a culturally relevant terms in our community is that they got high on their own supply. The propaganda was supposed to convince us of all the things that they were saying, but it convinced them. And so now they can't see the forest for the trees. They can't see the truth of what really happened this cycle. So yeah, fear is really all they had. And what's happening now is that the electorate, they starting to see that Trump has the biggest non-white coalition for any Republican president in decades, right? And so, you know, you got to come to grips with the truth that fear that we told them wasn't going to be enough to get us to get on board, wasn't enough for the Hispanics, wasn't enough for white women, and wasn't enough for white people with no college education. And so, you know, those are things that got to be delved into and looked at the next level. But the bottom line is that the fear did not work. And so, though there are things that Trump is going to do from an American freedman perspective, if we look at his last presidential term, Trump didn't put anything in place that specifically targeted us as a demographic, like the crime bill, like Bill Clinton and Joe Biden did. Nothing as specific like Kamala Harris did in California with her truancy laws, right? So we got to really weigh that out. I'm not saying Trump isn't racist. I'm not saying Trump doesn't have his flaws. I'm not saying Trump was a great candidate. They both were horrible in my opinion. But we got to face the facts that this administration, this current administration, target our families historically, while Trump did not. And I'm not saying everything he did benefited us, but he did not target us specifically legislatively. And I think that needs to be pointed out.
All right, so let's go into some of the results, bro.
Yeah.
So it looked like Kamala, man, she actually took New York, man. Your thoughts on that one?
So again, and this is one of the things that, you know, most people will just stay on the surface and they'll look at that and say, well, Biden won New York, Harris won New York. But when you go into the next level statistics on that, right, the margin is shrinking. And so we have to pay attention to demographic shifting. And so Donald Trump lost New York in 2020 by over 30-something points, like 28 to 30 points. Where now in New York in 2024, I believe that he lost the state by less than 20 points. And I believe it was around 10 to 15 points. And so that's a quote-unquote blue stronghold, right? And so when that's starting to happen, and I believe in New Jersey, he lost New Jersey by less than 10 points. So we're talking about blue strongholds that are shifting. And in New York specifically, I can't speak toward Jersey, but in New York specifically, that shift is happening because of what happened with the migrant crisis. See, you can lie all day on the media. The mainstream media is going to carry your propaganda. But what you can't lie to and who you can't lie to are the people on the ground living this every day. And people on the ground lived it. We saw them coming in. We saw them committing crimes. We saw them getting set aside and resources that people could not get. We saw them stepping over New York citizens that were homeless. And people getting not into shelters like they say the homeless people need to go into, but they were being put into 3, 4, and 5-star hotels. and given a choice of what food they want to eat and what they didn't want to eat. That's a slap in the face. And so though she still won it, I think those demographics are shifting, and if they're not careful, New York could turn red. That's why Donald Trump did that rally in Madison Square Garden. Now, regardless of whatever you thought about it and some of the rhetoric that came out of it, I definitely did not agree with. But he packed Madison Square Garden, and that was possible because of what the Democrats did with these illegal aliens in New York specifically.
All right, brother. So, could we talk about the U.S. Senate race as well, man? In the federal level, it looks like Christine Gillibrand.
Yeah, Kristen Gillibrand.
Gillibrand.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just botched her name all up, bro.
It's all good.
So it looks like New York has one representative for Senate, or you guys have one or two out there in New York?
I believe it's Kristen. I think it might be. I think it's one, if I'm not mistaken. I know there's Gillibrand. I think there's another one. I'm not too sure. I know we have Gillibrand. I know we have Jeffries. He's in the House, and he won his race as well. And I think that was who was up for this election cycle. But I believe all the U.S. Senate candidates will be up at the same time. But I've only seen results for Kristen Gillibrand's race. So either we only have one or the other person maybe wasn't contested. I'm not too sure about that off the top of my head, to be honest.
All right, got you. And then looks currently in New York, the Democrats got 19 seats. It says, according to this chart, they gained 3 seats in this election. The Republican has 7 seats, which lost 3 seats, so that's a total of 26 U.S. House of Representatives in New York. In terms of those like statistics and figures on the federal level, what do you think? I know Democrats, both Republicans and Democrats, we've had some issues with trying to get reparations passed, especially on the federal level. But out there in New York, and then that, I guess that's a good segue in terms of what's happening in New York with reparations. But in terms of the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate, what's the temperature like? How do you think these individuals would vote for federal reparations?
Ooh, that's a great question. Especially since so I got a chance to meet with Hakeem Jeffries' office. I've yet to meet with him personally. Now I've met him at different events because he, when he was campaigning throughout the years, and I'm heavily involved in my local community. So I've met with him and had conversations with him, frequently, but nothing official to get an official stance on with him personally. Now I've met with his with his staff, his administration, being a direct constituent of his. And they all come with the same line of, we support HR 40, right? And so, just getting that messaging across that, hey, that is no longer sufficient. That is no longer a constitutional piece of legislation with the way it's written, or at least the recommendations that an HR 40 would produce would not be constitutional. So we're getting our message out there, and felt at this point in time, I'm not sure how Hakeem Jeffries would vote, to be perfectly honest. And a lot of that is because he's in the pocket of AIPAC. He is definitely bought and paid for, in my personal opinion, based on what I've seen and how he votes. I think a lot of stuff that he does is highly symbolic, but that's most Democrats. And I think that's why this election is so important from an American freedman standpoint. Because as we continue to break down the numbers and get our narrative out there, we have to let them know that with the shrinking demographics, like I talked about in New York, of how it's going more towards red, even though it's not red yet, but Donald Trump winning all of the swing states, and the black vote playing a huge role in certain places. When you look at Texas, with 30% of black men voted for Trump, what they need to understand is that we are becoming, if not already, an official swing vote. And what happens is when you're a swing vote is now people fight and compete for your support. And that's what the Black American grassroots, that's what those of us that are fighting for reparations have always told the Boule class, always told those legacy organizations, always told those Afro shills, that you don't get what you want by being blindly loyal and then trying to push them after they have your vote. You have to let them know that there is a real threat that you will not vote for them at all. And when you join the facts, combine the fact of how we voted in different swing states and how Trump received more black votes than any other Republican candidate in history, and then you factor in the numbers of all the black folks that could vote that didn't come out at all, what you're starting to see is that the demographics are shifting for the Democrats. And no longer can you give us empty symbolism. No longer can you give us what Kamala tried to give black men, which was universal programs with black men slapped at the top of it, even though everybody could get it. So we have to have them understand that, hey, look, if you want to continue winning elections, if you want to get back in there in 2028, if you want to have a good showing in 2026, you're going to start having to come to speak to us. And the way to speak to us is not black, it's not people of color, it is freedmen. And when you speak to us in terms of freedmen and you get some specific legislation for us in terms of freedmen, then we can talk. Then we can talk about supporting you. Then we can talk about voting for you at the numbers that we used to. But until you do that, our movement is only growing. That will continue to hold you accountable. If that means dealing with and enduring a couple of Republican presidents, senators, and local politicians, then so be it, because we're not getting what we want from them and we're not getting what we want from you. But you need us to win, unlike them who don't really need us in the same way to win. And so that is where what our message has always been, and this election has illuminated that in ways that no other messaging could have. And I think that's why it's such a powerful moment for the Black American grassroots and those of us pushing for remedial justice for American freedmen families.
Absolutely, bro. Absolutely. All right, so let's go on to the legislature in New York State. The legislature is a lawmaking branch of state government. It is bicameral, a two-house body composed of the Senate and the Assembly. The Constitution authorizes a Senate of varying number, currently 63 members, and Assembly of 150 members, who are elected from districts throughout the state for 2-year terms. Each member of the legislature must be a United States citizen, a resident of the state for 5 years, and in most cases, of the Senate or Assembly district for 1 year preceding the election. Now, these are some unofficial results currently right now. Obviously, as in California, New York is still getting the tally of ballots there. So this is not official, okay? So it most likely will change. And as I was telling all this information, it might not be exact numbers, so this is just approximate numbers, all right? But in New York State right now for the Senate, this is New York State, okay? This is state, this isn't federal, this is state. Just need to reiterate that. Currently, the Democrats have 46 seats that they're currently winning. The Republicans have 17, and I don't believe there is any other independent or other party that's currently winning or involved in the Senate side. And then in the Assembly side, the Democrats have 108 and the Republicans have 42, and currently no other Assembly members right now for the candidates. So once again, this is unofficial that's happening right now. So in terms of, it looks like the Democrats are winning in both houses in the state for the Senate and the Assembly. Now, you did mention in terms of tangibles and so forth, and we're having, these reparations discussion in New York. I mean, depending on what happens, obviously, from what comes about in New York with the commission and so forth. Because out here in California, after the report was presented to specifically the California Legislative Black Caucus, and then for the other members, I mean, I know you guys haven't fully or not you guys, but I say in particular the commission or the task force out there in New York, um, just to kind of give us, an understanding. So once whatever comes about of this commission, is something going to be presented according to the legislation currently for the commission to the legislation, and then based on that or whatever is going to be presented to them, then are they going to do something like we do out here in California, where you have to vote on that particular legislation that's presented from the commission out there in New York?
To my knowledge, that's exactly correct. I think that's what happens. Like, they're going to come up with their task based on legislation to give recommendations. So it's going to be exactly the same process, fortunately and unfortunately. So they're going to come up with some recommendations, and then those are going to be presented to the body politic here in New York. But I'm not totally sure on this point. But what I believe is that the one difference might be, and don't hold me to this, but and I'll find out for sure, is that any of the recommendations that come out of the task force, the senator, the author on the Senate level, who is Senator Sanders, and the author on the Assembly, who is Assemblywoman Szalages, I believe that they automatically would become the authors of any of that legislation coming out of the task force that they deem that they want to push, right? So if anything comes out, any of those recommendations want to be pushed, I believe they will become the automatic authors of it. Unlike, I think, in California, other people had to present certain things. Now, other people can, but I think some of the direct things from the task force will come from Senator Sanders and Assemblywoman Szalages.
Okay. So speaking of that, so here are the current members that we have. So we probably got a couple minutes, brother. If you kind of just want to go through and just touch on, I know we already touched, I guess, each individually last time. You kind of just want to briefly touch up on this body here and just give us a brief synopsis of each one, and then we'll go into the upcoming public hearing.
Absolutely. So real quick, Jennifer Jones Austin, she is associated with NAN, and she's done racial justice work. She's been on a couple of racial justice committees. She was appointed by Governor Hochul. We have Timothy Hoggs. Last time I said he was an economist. That was my mistake. He is not. He's the commissioner of the Department of Civil Services. He was also appointed by Governor Hochul. He is a graduate of Buffalo University. He's going to be presiding over that public hearing in Buffalo, which we're going to get to. Again, also appointed by Governor Hochul. Then you have Linda Brown. She is associated with the Syracuse NAACP. She was also appointed by Governor Hochul. Derek Hamilton, he is the economist. He was appointed by Andrea Stewart Cousins. I have not seen him at any of the meetings. I don't know if he's been to any, and I don't know if I've seen him on any of the. They don't really have any of the virtual meetings yet taking place. But yeah, I don't know if I've seen him at any event. He might have been at the first one, which I was not at. But all the meetings since then, I have not seen or heard from him. But he is an economist and appointed by Andrew Stewart Cousins. Linda Tarrant Reed, she is the secretary. She is an activist in New Rochelle. She was also appointed by Andrea Stewart Cousins. She was the individual at the last meeting that I went to in person in New Rochelle, and she is one that pleaded with this task force to take this work personally and internalize it and do a lot of the advocacy that people needed to spread the word, since they didn't really have a budget for advertisement, which goes toward us advocating that there be a budget in the bill, but they went with the other bill. And so, but I wanted to point out her call to action for the other commissioner members. Chanel Hawkins, she is the chair of the task force. She is associated with the Urban League, and she was also appointed by Andrea Stewart Cousins. Dr. Ron Daniels, the people's favorite Pan-Africanist, Narc and Cobra and IBW 21. We know who he is. He is a adversary to getting reparations done correctly, because he feels that everybody black, regardless of whenever they got into the country, deserves reparations. He was appointed by the Speaker of the House, Carl Hastie. Lori Daniel Favors is another Pan-African, his partner in crime. She works for Mega Evers, and she has a radio station or a radio show on XM Radio. She is also appointed by Carl Hastie. And then our favorite vice chair, Reverend Dr. Deborah Jenkins. She is a proponent and an advocate, staunch advocate for lineage-based reparations. She is a pastor, and she is out of, I believe, the Bronx. And she was also appointed by Speaker of the House, Carl Hastie. And she narrowly beat out Dr. Ron Daniels to become the vice chair of the task force.
All right, thanks for that, man. Appreciate that. All right, let's go into the upcoming public hearing that's happening actually tomorrow. So you want to give some updates on what's happening, where it's at, and how people can stay up to date and stay tuned for this upcoming public hearing.
Absolutely. So, like you said, the next public hearing is actually tomorrow. It's going to be from 5:30 to 9:30. It's in Buffalo. So, unfortunately, me being a city boy, we and downstate, as they say, from upstate, even though we don't call it that here in the city, I will not be able to make that event tomorrow. But thankfully, because of the advocacy work that our organization has been doing long before this task force became a reality, we actually have volunteers and members in Buffalo, so they will be at that meeting, so we will have a presence. The difference between this meeting and the others is that this is a public hearing, so the large majority of it will be the community coming out, giving their testimony, giving their thoughts, giving their suggestions, telling their story, whatever they decide to talk about. I know on the press release for this event, they talked about a special focus will be on slavery in Buffalo to a certain degree. So I'm not sure if that's the storyline that they'll be talking from, but I do know that you can go there. I'm not sure how much time each speaker will be given, but I do know that everyone will get a chance to speak. And so I'm imploring all of our Buffalo freedmen, get out there, go to this event, make your voices heard, let them know how to get reparations right, let them know what you want to see. Obviously, from my standpoint, I would say definitely let them know that the community of eligibility needs to be those families whose ancestors was formerly enslaved and emancipated and nobody else. And so, but definitely, if that's not your message, still go and have your voices heard, because they need to hear from the community, because up until now, it's been a small handful of us and them controlling the narrative. So go out there and take your narrative back. So that is the press release that's on the screen right now. And right there in the middle where it says, during the Buffalo hearing on November 12th, testimonies will address critical topics under the theme of harms of slavery in Buffalo, New York, inviting discussions about Buffalo's unique history and legacy within the broader context. Community members are encouraged to contribute to this important dialogue. So again, that's the narrative that they have set. But even if you can't speak towards that, go and speak towards your own personal story, and go speak towards what you want to see this task force do in terms of getting remedial justice right for our families. So thank you for posting that press release up, brother Samoya.
All right, so real briefly before we get out of here, so I mean, eventually, do you see the commissions actually talk about eligibility and some other recommendations that are going to be coming out of this, or have they even talked about something like that yet?
So they haven't talked about anything outside of us giving those comments to implore that they do it that way. And so one of the things that, again, this is not an official meeting, but again, going back to when we talked about Dr. Daniels and Lori Daniel Favors, one of the things that is very concerning is that in order to make a false equivalent with us pushing for lineage-based reparations, she brought up, and I mentioned this last time, she brought up the fact that, oh, you know, if you want to do that and you're going to get all these people excluded, then understand that if your ancestors were enslaved in New York, then you wouldn't be eligible for reparations underneath this bill either. And that's just not true. And so the legislation does not call for that. That is not anywhere in the legislation. That is her interpretation of it and the messaging that she wants to push, so that people will say, oh, well, I don't want to just limit it to people that were enslaved in New York, so let's open up to everybody, thus having it opened up to everybody based on race. And those are two different conversations and two different arguments. And so I'm bringing that up to say, outside of that, and that was a Zoom before the actual task force convened, there has been no official conversations about the community of eligibility from the task force outside of us, the U.S. Freedmen Project, myself, and other advocates in New York going and giving public testimony and public comments about the community of eligibility being only us, and making sure that's the only way to get it done right. Obviously, the moral argument, which they don't care about, but it's the legal and constitutional argument that they have to care about.
All right, so I know that the last meetings have been streamed online, and if we can, we're going to actually try to, you know, get the stream up here on ETN Media Group, at least the hour and a half, because we actually have something to attend during that time, but maybe we can actually get, you know, at least some of it.
Right.
Are they going to actually be streaming this on their website or on YouTube or something like that?
I know they've done a great job at streaming the other meetings. So, but I'm not too sure. I know they have a budget. I know they had, you know, I forgot how much they were. I think it was $1 million, either $1 million or $5 million they were given. So I think they have gotten some of that stuff secured. So I believe that it will be streamed. I haven't seen any information on the official site saying that it will be or that it won't. So we're hoping that it is. And so, but we don't know officially for sure.
Okay. All right, man. Well, as always, brother, we appreciate your time and energy and your fight for lineage-based reparations out in New York and on a federal level. Any words of advice or anything you want to say, social media, anything going on with U.S. Freedmen Project outside of the commission out there in New York? And then I will let you have the last word and we'll wrap it up.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So I just want to say, yes, follow us at US Freedmen PRJ. That is our official Twitter account. That's where we, or X account, whatever you want to call it. That's where we, have updates on what's going on, any events that we're doing. The last event that we did was actually on October 28th, which was the birthday or anniversary of the commemoration of the Statue of Liberty in New York Harbor. We got out there amongst the people. We posted those comments and our message to the public on our Twitter, so you can go and check that out. It was a great event. And the great thing about it was that, and most sad thing about it was that most people did not even know. Obviously, because of the crowd that it gets attracted down there is mostly immigrants from other countries and people from other states on vacation. But the bottom line is not one person knew that it was the commemoration of the Statue of Liberty, and few people knew that the statue was built in the honor of the American freedmen who had fought their way to emancipation and had this country recognize it. And so that was a great piece of history. We're looking to do that every year, and it's only going to get bigger and better. The next thing that we're looking to do is the same thing you did here today. We're looking to assemble a panel. We're working on that right now. We've reached out to a couple of people to have an American Freedmen-centered panel that's going to break down and analyze the results of this election, what it means for our movement moving forward. So we're looking forward to doing that. So that's what we have in store. And the last thing I want to say is, again, Happy Veterans Day. And just to kind of point out the ignorance of those comments of saying that it should be only for those that were enslaved in New York. On this Veterans Day, I want to bring some attention to the story of Isaac Woodard Jr. He was a veteran of World War II. He came home and went back to South Carolina. He was pulled off of a bus, and he was beat so bad with a billy club that he was blinded permanently. The federal government stepped in and, to try the case of the sheriff, Sheriff Shull, Shull, Shull. He was acquitted by an all-white jury, but Woodard Jr., then in the Second Great Migration, came to New York, lived and died, and is buried in a cemetery out in Long Island. And so to sit there and say and not be aware of how many of not just our veterans, but of our Black American ancestors that migrated from various places, specifically South Carolina and Georgia is the majority states that people have come to New York from. My family is that way as well. But the bottom line is to try to limit a family like Woodard's to say that, well, because you weren't enslaved in New York, if reparations was given, you wouldn't get it. That is a travesty, and that's something that we are pushing back against as the U.S. Freedom Project and as the members of the Black American Grassroots. We will not allow them to frame our justice claim, our remedial justice, in the ways that they want to, in efforts to include everybody with melanin. But we're going to stand on business and make sure that we take up not only for our veterans like Woodard, but for everybody else. And just, I'll be remiss to not mention this, and I'll end on this, that again, this country has always done policies based on status, and veteran is one of those statuses, just like freedmen is one of those statuses, and just like immigrants are one of those statuses, right? And that's exactly why in New York they tried to play the shell game, and instead of having them be illegal aliens or illegal immigrants, they changed it to migrant, because migrant is a status. Asylum seeker is a status with which you can give special set-asides that you can't give for illegal aliens and illegal immigrants. And so that is the game that they have been playing in front of our face. And thankfully, due to efforts like our brother Amoya and ETM Media and all of us on the grassroots level, we are making that known, and more people are becoming aware of status. And we will only continue to grow as we push for status-based remedial justice and status-based policies for our people and for our families that were formerly enslaved, emancipated in the United States of America, and earned the status of freedmen.
Wonderful, brother. All right, so we do have one comment here. See if you could give your interjection on. Queen Yasmin, just want to give a shout out to her out of East Palo Alto. They're doing great work down there.
Hey, Queen.
Shout out to Queen Yasmin. But we do have a comment from Danger Boy Hits. Are they gonna crash out? I'm assuming like the either the New York Commission's task force, or maybe they're referring to the New York legislation, out like they did us in California. Why do we have to plead our cases when it's fact and present like they still held racist?
Well, listen, I agree with your second sentiment, Danger Boy Hits. The first one, though, if we got to be totally honest and totally transparent, that remains to be seen. Could they crash it out? 100%. And I think what we're doing right now by bringing awareness to it with our brother Moya's platform, thank you to ETM Media, and what we're doing on the ground here in New York is that we're rallying the troops, right? And so we're looking so that by the time this year is over, now it's less than a year, unless they get an extension, but by the time it gets down to recommendations in this New York State legislative body, we are looking to have a groundswell. We're looking to have a critical mass of American freedmen and any allies that want to come along for the ride that will be at the ready, so that if they do try to crash it out, there will be consequences and repercussions. And that is really all we could do as the people, as constituents. We can't control what they do. We can put pressure on them to make sure they do what we want them to do. But in the event that they don't, we have to let them know that there are consequences for crashing out. And that's what we're building as we're getting to that moment. Because again, I was told by a high-ranking Democrat, as Brother Amoya points out with those numbers that he posted from the New York State Assembly and the New York State Senate, that Republicans in New York don't run anything but their mouths. So that's a good thing, so that when and if this thing gets crashed out, we know exactly who to put the blame on. It ain't the Republicans, it's the Democrats, because they don't run anything but their mouths, and we're going to see if these Democrats run anything else but their mouths as well, having the majority in the state assembly and in the state senate. And so we will see. But it's definitely a possibility, Danger Boy Hits. But we're doing everything that we can as an organization with our advocacy and doing everything we can to rally enough troops by doing multiple events and bringing awareness, so that if that does happen, and when that moment comes and they have to make the decision, there's a group of people, a large group of people looking at them saying, what you gonna do? And that's where our power is.
Absolutely, family. So definitely, if you're in New York or outside of New York, please support U.S. Freedmen's Project out there. They're doing great work. And us as grassroots, I mean, we barely get any money. Most of us are doing this voluntarily. I think all of us are pretty much doing this voluntary, man. So whatever monetary or moral support that you guys can give us, please do that. And please like, share, and subscribe on this channel. And go to our Amazon account. I mean, anything you guys can contribute to Emina Mass Media Group or to U.S. Freedmen's Project or Coalition for Just and Equitable California. We also have NAASD, who's fighting for lineage-based reparations on the national level, which I'm probably going to try to get Friday. And Mark Stevenson on here as well, so we can talk about federal reparations as well as what's going on, especially with the new Trump administration. It's going to be very right?
Right. It's going to get very, very interesting. And so I think we're going to really see how much of a businessman he is. And so what's really profound is that once you eliminate all the noise, there were multiple events that Trump did his first time around where he had black people coming into the White House. Now we know that those things were we know they weren't substantive, right? Nobody was advocating for policy specifically for our lineage, but that just goes to show you if past behavior is any predictor of what can happen in the future. We do know that his administration is open to having them come there. So it's only going to take one time for one of us, any of us, all of us, to get that invite for one of those events, and we're going to get in there speaking truth to power and calling on that deal-making acumen of his that he touts to say, hey, listen, here, we need to make a deal for the American freeman, what you want to do. And it's my belief that we have some of the best people in the business. So I don't care who gets the invite, whether, it could be the U.S. Freedmen Project, it could be NASD, it could be LEAP, it could be ETM, it could be CJEC. Any number or any one of us could get that invite, and just based on the work and the trust that I have in any one of those, I would bet money and bet my life on them going there and advocating for our lineage in the way that it needs to be advocated. I don't even need to be in the room to cheer them on and know that when they got in there, they're gonna speak truth to power in the way that needs to be spoken and do everything that they can to advocate for our lineage in the most just, equitable, and powerful way. So we're gonna see. I'm excited.
Absolutely, brother. So I got to do this, man, before we go, because you've done such a great job. Here we go.
I appreciate that. I'm humble, man. I'm thankful.
Straight fire, brother. And you're always welcome, to our platform. And let us know. Maybe we should bring you on before. I think there's one that's coming up in December as well, brother. So we'd definitely like to have you on, give us some updates before the next public hearings. I think it's in December, right?
It's in December. So definitely bring me on, because we're gonna, if you can, because we're gonna be at that one, and we're looking to pack the house. That's right in our wheelhouse. That's in New York City. That's gonna be in Queens. We actually have a member of our organization that is on this the local civics club down in that area, and she is intricately tied to that where they're gonna have the event. So we're gonna definitely look to pack that thing out. Yeah, Roy Wilkins Park. There you go. That's gonna be Monday, December 16th, at the Roy Wilkins Park Community Center. And we actually, every year since we've met her, we've actually done a Juneteenth event at Roy Wilkins Park, where we went from the first year of being the only people having the Juneteenth flag and representing red, white, and blue to where we went last year. That number grew. And so our influence is being felt. And so, a shout out to that sister, Loretta Humphreys. And she is somebody that's been doing the work in that area for long before she met us. And when we saw her at the first Juneteenth event we did there, or plugging into the event that's done there, she was like, wait, hold on, y'all got red, white, and blue? Y'all got a Juneteenth flag? What y'all about? What y'all doing? And ever since then, it's been a match made in heaven. And she's been, learning from us. We've been learning from her. And so that's just one of the exciting alliances that we've been able to build. And she's going to be integral in getting that event right there, December 16th, packed out with people that understand lineage and that are willing, more than willing, to voice their opinions and hold these politicians and task force members accountable in Queens. So Queens, December 16th, that's going to be an event, and so we're going to pack that house out.
All right, wonderful, brother. So thanks everyone for joining. Have a good Veterans Day, everybody. You too, Divine. And
Absolutely.
please, in about next, I don't know, 5-10 minutes, I got to prep for the next show that we have coming up. So definitely stay in tune. We're actually going to be talking predominantly, once again, about the Democrats later on. I don't know when, but eventually we're going to look into the Trump administration as well in terms of freedmen and those who descend from U.S. chattel slavery in the United States. So thanks everyone for joining. And on that note, as always, please take care of yourself. And we're out, family. Peace and reparations.